I'm Benedict. I am the director of content at NewsWhip, and with me I have Alex Kallner, who is our in-house media expert. Some of you may be missing our other in-house media expert, Sarah Katritos, but Alex is filling in for her today very ably, I might add. And we also have Gabriel Sands here with us, who is the Senior Partnerships Manager of News and Lifestyle at Reddit. Gabriel, thanks for joining us. Alex, thanks for joining us. Alex, if you could just introduce yourself while Gabriel's joining, that would be great, and then we'll do Gabriel a proper introduction.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Some of you, if you may know me as if you've ever been rolled into NewsWhip, I think anytime in the last 2.5 years, I am responsible for a lot of the training for new clients, client education and onboarding. But I am also along with Ben and a few others, one of our in-house media analysts. So I have a lot of experience working with Reddit for a lot of different purposes, but primarily servicing content in a lot of creative ways. So pretty much if you name it, I've seen it at one point. So we're going to walk through a lot of the different scenarios that you would be able to use Spike in order to service that content. And I'm really excited to get started today.
Great, and Gabriel, I fear I didn't give you a proper introduction there as you were joining. So if you'd like to just tell the people who you are and what you're going to talk about today.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to get everything to work. I'm Gabriel. I've been at Reddit for a little over 6 years now, supporting partners across news and journalism. So I want to provide everyone with an overview of the platform, some nuts and bolts, and basically how the platform works, because understanding the architecture of the platform will make you much more successful when you're trying to, comb in for content so you can understand the context of what you're looking at.
Great, thanks. And then basically the structure of this webinar, Gabriel's going to do an introduction to Reddit, and then we're going to dive into the NewsWhip platform. We're going to talk a bit about how journalists can use Reddit in their work and how NewsWhip can enable them to do that, and the powered by Reddit features that we have within the platform. So, Gabriel, did you want to talk through a deck, or do you want to just chat through? Alex has it ready to go if you want to.
Yes, if Alex wants to load it up, then I will.
That's great, Alex. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, and then Gabriel can talk through it. So, yeah, Gabriel, I'll hand the floor over to you at this point, and then if we have any questions as we go, please do put them in the chat, folks. We'll either, if they make sense with the flow, we'll answer them as they come up, or if not, we'll get to them at the end. I promise. Great.
Awesome. Yeah, so the primary thing that we want folks to understand about Reddit is that Reddit is oriented entirely around communities, and the communities are either going to be topical or interest-based. And users obviously participate in and contribute to these communities, and that's really what makes them tick. And that is more the nucleus, and everything architecturally on Reddit hangs off of these communities. Whereas on other platforms, the orientation is generally around a profile product. The profile product is where you publish your content. That's likely what you're used to doing in your roles professionally. And then people consume content by essentially following you or liking your page or whatever the action that the user would take is, and that populates their home feed. Whereas on Reddit, your home feed is comprised of popular posts from the communities that you have joined. So what that means is that there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of exploration happening on Reddit. People operate off of pseudonymous usernames, so they generally contribute and participate in a very authentic and real way. They often share things that they likely wouldn't share on other platforms. And it makes it a very different experience. And the experience of influence on Reddit is really determined by a collective of community members basically co-signing or validating a user's contribution, or perhaps the opposite if it's not considered a good contribution. Whereas other platforms, there's going to be much more curation and superficiality perhaps to how you're presenting yourself on the platform, because you're interacting with people that you either know or know of. And the primary actions of the platform are either going to be broadcasting. If you are working in a news organization, obviously a large part of what you're doing is broadcasting your content to your page to reach audience that are interested. And on the opposite end of that, you're scrolling. You're scrolling through your feed, looking for something that may interest you. Whereas on Reddit, you theoretically have already isolated what's going to be in your feed to things that you're already interested in. It's a bit more directed. The metaphor that sometimes works also to help understand, this is less to understand the community, but more how people operate on Reddit, is to think of an iceberg. A small part of the iceberg is above the surface of the water. I would say that those are other social platforms. And the majority of the iceberg is, of course, beneath the surface. That's the real you. And those are the things that you're often able to share on Reddit. Next slide.
Great.
So Reddit is oriented entirely around communities. The communities are called subreddits. These words are interchangeable. The naming convention for a subreddit is r slash and then the subreddit name, for example, r slash news. We have over 100,000 active communities and over 570 million monthly visitors to these communities. So there's quite a lot of audience coming to Reddit. Next slide. So I am realizing now that I see this, we have actually hit gender parity. So for folks' knowledge, we are now at 50-50 male, female, which is a really big accomplishment for us. The percentages have been shifting more towards parity over the 6 years that I've been working here. But I think it's really a testament to the extent to which Reddit has grown. We're a company that's been around for 20 years. Sometimes people don't realize that we've been around for that long, and we have really evolved into something that is much more substantial than what we were even, frankly, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We have a young audience, likely to the surprise of no one. They have a higher household income than I think many may suppose. They also have a higher level of education than users of other platforms. We have a greater percentage of users with upper level degrees than other social platforms. So this is generally a very knowledgeable, higher than average earning audience. We are biggest in English language markets because we're all about authentic community. Obviously, communities can be translated, but there's nothing like speaking directly in whatever your native language is, and therefore growing communities abroad in whatever the local language is a process that we are obviously investing in, but I think will continue to take a little bit of time to mature. For what it's worth, the process of growing a subreddit is often very slow. It really takes a bit of time to get the momentum. Once you have the momentum, it's very self-propelled and tends to compound upon itself. But there's definitely a little bit of kickstarting. Also worth noting, and this is again, primarily English language engagement. We've really seen a lot of growth in India. Really interesting to see a lot of the communities and conversations that are happening there. And most of our users, lastly, are reaching us on mobile via our app. And this, for reference, is the inverse of what it was 6 years ago. Reddit was historically a desktop-forward publication or platform, and obviously it's significantly easier to navigate on a smaller screen, and it's helped grow our user base because most people are on their phones. Next slide. So I've been rattling off audience numbers. I think many folks likely know that Reddit has a fairly large audience. That's why we're interested, or why you're interested. We also have a fairly substantial unduplicated audience, meaning that a lot of our users eschew other social platforms. I would assume it's because Reddit is foundationally different, and therefore the experience of being a user on the platform to me feels very different than other social platforms. So there's a lot of audience that exists uniquely on Reddit. Therefore, if you are not engaging on Reddit as a publication, there is a potentially substantial audience that you are not reaching. And similarly, if you are, looking for trending content across social, if you are not looking at Reddit, you are likely missing a substantial part of the story. Obviously, we are part of the broader, platform internet ecosystem, but a lot of things really do start on Reddit, and a lot of users are very loyal to our communities. Next slide. So belonging on Reddit is based on passions and interests. It is not based on social connections. This is a really big differentiator. This is often why also influencers, as we conventionally know them, are not really a thing on Reddit in the same way. Some users on Reddit are influential for having a lot of karma, but frankly, they're often sometimes derided for being too much about themselves. It really plays out very, very differently. Influence on Reddit comes from one's contributions. And that influence is often ranked with upvotes because you can vote up or down, and that affects where content falls in a feed. People often have a shared emotional connection as a result of being part of a community on Reddit. Obviously, some more than others, but if you go over to NYC Micromobility these days, they are, first of all, they're really pissed off about the congestion pricing situation, but they are a community. They organize IRL events that they have together. They're creating merch for their subreddit. People are very emotionally invested in this, not to mention support communities or communities for, expectant moms who are in their 3rd month, 4th month, 5th month of pregnancy. We have all of these things, and people get very attached to these spaces. And there's a lot of need fulfillment. A large part of why folks were coming to Reddit via search was because we were providing our users, frankly, were providing high quality responses to questions that were real and composed by humans. Reddit often adds value to users' lives, either in the form of information, social connection, entertainment. But you generally, at least I generally leave Reddit feeling more full rather than less. Next slide. Although sometimes I worry about the world, but I guess that would happen anyway. Not specific to us. So the number one reason that users come to the platform is to be informed. I mentioned that r/ is a naming convention for a subreddit. U/ is a naming convention for a user. And communities will validate contributions that add value to the community through the eyes of the moderators and through the eyes of the users. There's a lot of curation always happening on Reddit because users are voting up and down. So when you see something that's starting to trend on Reddit, it should be treated as already having cleared a few bars for audience engagement and virality by virtue of the fact that there are so many people that are, pumping it up to get to the point where you even will start to notice it. Next slide. Or that spike will happen.
Yeah, that's the end of the presentation that we have. So we'll get straight into some questions then, if that's okay, Gabriel. I think you've already answered my first question, which is what is it that makes Reddit stand out? I think there's several answers there, from the community approach to the unduplicated audience. So I'll move on to another one, which is obviously you're working with a lot of folks that use Reddit, journalists that use Reddit, as are we. But from your experience, what are people looking for? What are journalists looking to Reddit to give them in their jobs as journalists? I'd imagine sort of there's several answers to that. So maybe from a content answer to an audience development answer. I mean, I'd love to hear about both.
Yeah, I can start with audience development and then bring it home with content, because there are a lot of different, ways that journalists may derive value from the platform. When it comes to audience development, these are generally very engaged users that are very passionate about, the topics that are interesting to them. A large part of why people come to Reddit is to discuss news and news adjacent content. So I think that there is an opportunity to expand your reach on the platform and to connect with existing users and to cultivate a new audience in a way that is really based on participation and again, mutually drive value. Any work that you do on Reddit around audience development, you have to earn every win, which means that, as you continue to invest, you will see more of a return. And this is I don't want to say largely untapped space, because there are, a good number of news outlets that are active on the platform. But there's a vast network of communities here and new audience, from locals to nationals to, topic specific publications. It's pretty much all on Reddit, and you likely already have fans on the platform. And obviously there will be many downstream positive effects. As far as, sourcing content, there are a number of different ways that journalists may go about this. I see journalists that are reaching out to users, all the time, asking to potentially use them as a source in a piece of reporting that they are working on. We have had journalists sometimes work collaboratively with moderators to basically post a call for submissions if there's a particular story or topic that they're working on. But of course, predominantly what is happening, and this is where NewsWhip Spike comes into play, is they're looking to see what people have already contributed on Reddit. We have so much new content being created by our users all the time. A lot of that can often be very performant and can be indicative of broader trends. So generally seeing the perspective of what are users talking about on the platform and using that to inform some of your own content production or creation strategy is a large part of why folks will come to the platform. But of course, with over 100,000 communities and everyone operating pseudonymously, being able to separate the wheat from the chaff and really understand what's relevant within your specific area of focus makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and seeing what's resonating with people. And I guess, that last point you made kind of is the dovetail of content creation and audience development. If you know something already has an audience that's just waiting for the content to be created, that's, I think, reassuring and can help you make the case to write that piece a lot of the time as well. I think it makes sense maybe to jump into the platform, Alex, and we can talk this through with some examples. So we have a few examples here. I think if we start with searching for kind of keywords, that would be great. So there's several ways you can approach this in NewsWhip Spike, which is the platform that we're showing here. But yeah, I'll let Alex talk us through some keyword searches that he's created.
Yeah, starting with keyword, I think just to reiterate what Gabriel said as well, is that this is a very unique network where I'd say 9 out of 10 times, if anyone comes to me asking how to surface content on Reddit, it's exactly as he said, is that they know that it's all there, there are built-in audiences, but we don't really have a way of accessing it or parsing through all of this information. I mean, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of posts a day. So what do we do and how do we get there? To use a very specific example, what I've done is I've gone into just a pre-made dashboard that's customized exclusively for Reddit. So it's going to surface a couple different things, but for the most part, it's surfacing two things. One is going to be just on a raw post level, I can identify anytime a specific keyword or set of words has been mentioned in across the entirety of the network, as well as where these keywords are being mentioned across all of the top communities in Reddit. So again, I was going to use an example of something like a generalized term, but I did a quick search on congestion pricing, and it's a phenomenal example. So Gabriel, thank you for mentioning that one. I really like it. I think it's a really easy way to see these kind of micro communities, how they develop and what that looks like. So all I did there is I typed in my keyword exactly like this, just the full phrase in the search query bar. And this is in real time going to update all of these results. I'm looking at like roughly the last 7 days, but I can go to the last 24 hours. And this is today's point of this conversation. You can do this with anything. You can add even New York, and now I'm going to get an even more targeted, refined version of that. So super, super powerful in the sense that you have all of Reddit at your disposal. And as soon as you pop in that keyword, there's a lot of ways to slice this data. And Ben, I don't know if you have another question about that or if you want to refine
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, I'm curious. Just this shows you can also search within the comments, right? So if this is coming up, exclusively within comments rather than people posting about it, it might be a point of discussion that people are sounding off about in the comments potentially.
100%. So to use a really general example, I even just had, even right now, I'm just looking at trending general English language content. There's no keyword here. Everyone's talking about the Olympics, but to get a little bit more specific about that, if I were to say something like Team USA, I'm still surfacing this across all of Reddit. And then if I want to go to a comment level, I can. So you'll notice if I go up here, I'm just searching the posts. This means that it's going to have to show up in either the post or the body text of that post. If we expand that search where I click on posts and comments, this is now going to surface this term across any comment, any subreddit, even if you're familiar with Reddit's style of nesting in order of the conversation or performance of some of these like offshoot conversations within the threads themselves, we can surface those as well.
Great.
There's a degree
I'm
of
sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Alex, what exactly are we looking at here? How is it ranking these? It says score there. What does that mean? Or you could rank in other ways as well.
So in this case, it says score. If you're familiar with Reddit, it's going to be a composite of the upvotes and downvotes. If you're not familiar with Reddit, an upvote is I, as a user, get to say any piece of content I look at. If I want to see it raised in visibility, I click up. If I want to bump it back down, if I think it's not contributing to quality conversation, if it's not of value, sometimes it could be a light disagree button or agree button, but it's a good way of measuring genuine engagement from the community itself. And it's typically pretty honest in that authentic way. So this is the net upvotes minus the downvotes for that post. And right now I have it ranked by that score. If I do want to rank this by just the sheer number of comments that something has received, I can do that as well. So we can see the total there. And then if I also want to just look at most recent for my search, I can do the same thing and just go, they all have like about one up or down vote a piece. So very, very new, but those are the 3 ways of ranking.
And I think that comments point is really interesting because if you just skip, back to things kind of have not the highest score because what's interesting to people is the discussion rather than the start post of that thread, right? So often if you go into that, the comments will have way higher scores than the original post because people are interested in the discussion rather than let's start a discussion as a post.
Exactly. And the further you want to drill down into it, if we're doing like a really high level Team USA, but we're looking for comments, if I were to go into, let's say I need, it can't have any fewer than 5 matching comments. So it's not just a one-off on, if we have 13,000 comments on one thread, if it's less than 5, I'm not interested. So if I go to view details here and click in, I have the ability to look at the comments here, and I can uncheck it. So this is going to give me all 13,000 of them. But if I want to target immediately as you know, to the degree of fidelity of all of the any keywords I'm looking at, this is only going to surface the keywords that we're looking for, and it's only going to show the comments that are relevant to that.
Right. And you might do that, for example, for a use case, if you're looking for something very specific that maybe wouldn't be posted about a huge amount, but if people are suggesting it as an option in the comments or something like that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example too, where if you were to refine this in the sense that, you saw on the general Reddit page, I think a lot of publishers and journalists especially will log into the homepage of Reddit, maybe get a little overwhelmed and to try and take like scrape this the homepage basically, and not really know how to dive in deeper. So if you see that USA and Olympics are trending on the homepage, a lot of the time, most people will ask me, well, where do I find where it's actually being discussed aside from just the popular subjects? This is the way that I would go about that. So if I wanted to get really specific and, Olympics, what I would do is, if I spell that right, of course.
Danger of a live demo, as always.
What I'm looking for here is going to be not so much the more obvious pieces of conversation where it says, these are just Olympic context for, sports or anything like that. I really want to see, where people might be talking about this, even in like something like Pacers, NBA, what different communities, no stupid questions, like where is this organically kind of like, where are there areas of interest? And then if I want to look over to that, I just move over to my top communities. And it's going to show me that in just in a descending order, the view of who's getting the most engagement for the day. So if you ever do want to see, the number of posts, where that's coming from, you can unnest it there, and that's your view.
Great. And I think we want to get onto communities in a second, but I just want to bring Gabriel back in for a second. Gabriel, if you're still there, when somebody sees this, you say they're using NewsWhip to look at Reddit in this way, and they say, "Oh, that's a post I'm interested in." How would they approach that from using that in their own reporting? Are there best practices you'd suggest, or?
Yeah, definitely. So we have an embeds product, which is probably the simplest way to feature Reddit posts or comments or even a thread of comments in your reporting. It will be very easy when you're on the site, but you'll be able to just click share and then embed, and then it will spit out some embed code. And then you would just drop that into your CMS and the embed should automatically generate. If for some reason that is not working for you, we certainly would like to know. If you are using an embed, you should feel free to use the content. If you are not using an embed, the best practice is generally going to be to reach out to a user to ask them for permission to feature the content. I think that you can be also mindful of context. Is this someone sounding off about a very public topic, or is this someone sharing something fairly personal? I think there are some judgment calls to be made there. But you can see here with in the Spike interface the name of the user that created whatever the content is. So you should then be able to reach out to them, and if you have any questions, obviously let me know. But embeds are going to be the easiest way to feature Reddit content.
Great. Cool. So let's go back to the community stuff then. So we have a ranking of communities there that have looked at the keywords specifically. Is there a way to look at just communities more generally? Say that you want to follow discussion in certain very specific topics. Is there a way to do that within Spike as well?
100%. So people will either come to me with very broad mandate of, we just need to surface content through keywords. But a lot of the times there are existing lists of specific verticals where you might already know what your communities are. You just want to keep track of them. If you go back, I can just go into this group search here. This is a really good example of, let's say I work with, you are a more kind of lifestyle home publisher. You can have a curated list. So I'm running the exact same search. There are no keywords here, but I'm looking into each of these, what I've identified as my leading subreddits where the most discussion that I'm interested in is generated. From there, I still have my post view, which would be ranking the same content, but instead of all of Reddit, it's going to be, of course, just these individual subreddits I'm looking at. But then I think what's of most value to my publishers would be top communities. So it's that same ranking, but every day I would have my editorial teams. They pretty much always take a look at top communities, and this is where they know kind of what the day is going to look like, what communities are most active in discussion for, you know, whatever the subject is. In this case, this is a really good example of just like kind of like home goods vertical like that.
But you could also add a keyword into this, right? So and then it would just return results. So say you just wanted to see that post about your cantaloupe looking like a pumpkin or whatever. You know, we could you've spelled cantaloupe wrong there again. But yeah, you could then sorry, I gave you a really hard word. Maybe do pumpkin.
Yeah, not my spelling bee.
Yeah, no, but you could search just for yeah, kale, for example, if you wanted to look at what people were saying about that. So and that would just return results from within those communities only, right?
Correct. Exactly. And then if you want an example of, I'd say, a really robust one across just like, you know, all the categories of a vertical, you know, we'll do something like, you know, if it would be, I would call this my audience development dashboard, where it's really kind of a catch-all for whatever vertical you might be interested in. So piece by piece, it's going to look the same, but you have your identified slices of these areas or these little kind of enclaves in Reddit that you would be interested in. And this is where you start building a really intelligent nerve center for how you're going to service that content, regardless of what you're looking for.
Cool. And it could be, you know, much more long term as well, right? It doesn't have to just be the last 24 hours.
100%. So if I go over to my time frame, we can look at the last 7 days, the last month. We can go, you know, pretty far back anytime if I keep going back this way. But in this case, I mean, I can even go just show you what it would look like for the last 7 days. In terms of longevity, I do like, I'll keep running tabs on if I'm seeing, I'd say what I look out for is it the same user that tends to be posting, especially if it's a really specific subject or you know, story or community I'm tracking. I look for individual users, influencers to the extent that Reddit can have influencers, and then also influential subreddits. So I'd say the one kind of broader sensibility that I advise everyone to have when they are analyzing Reddit content is recognizing it as an incubator for a lot of organic discussion, where a lot of what's percolating is what you're going to end up seeing on the internet roughly a week or two later. You're going to catch it first here. And it's going to be, if you start seeing the same community in your specific subject of choice, it's a really, really good way of identifying that and getting ahead of it and really engaging with the raw, actual anonymous discussion that's happening in those communities.
Yeah, and I think something that I always notice with Reddit as well, not only is it often a precursor to what hits the news, it is also a place for long-term discussion of those things as well. So say there is some breaking news and maybe other platforms move on after sort of 72 hours, there will be communities in Reddit for sure that are still discussing it weeks, if not months later, because it is super interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely a long tail. And sorry, one thing to add to this also is that Reddit's really all about the comments. We say roughly for every post on Reddit, there are 9 comments.
Right.
So that is, you know, a large part of why people come to the platform is to discuss things, as everyone's been mentioning. But I think often elsewhere, one looks at comments less. But on Reddit, that they are certainly not to be overlooked, particularly if you're looking for, you know, authentic and honest perspectives from real people.
Yeah, and the approach, Gabriel, sorry, is the same for using comments as it would be for using a post.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great.
And frankly, you'll probably be featuring comments more than posts a lot of the time.
Yeah, and not unusual for them to have as many, if not more, upvotes than the original post, as we were saying earlier. Yeah, Alex, if you just want to talk us through a couple of more of these examples, that would be great. Please do send your questions in. If anyone has any questions, we will get them answered. We have about 10 minutes left of the webinar, so if there are no questions, we'll show you some more of the platform. But if not, we'll get straight onto those questions.
Yeah. So to Gabriel's point as well, the surfacing comments on Reddit, I'd say, is one of the most valuable things you can do. For me, when I'm looking at, you know, whatever the individual post would be, I'm not exact. I'll open up my search again. I'm not running any keywords yet through it, but I'm just looking at my kind of lifestyle and culture content here. Whenever I go into this view details aspect on the scorecard in Spike, you're going to have all of your information laid out right here. And then it's kind of my best way of making an editorial case for things, where I can show either the trajectory of how many posts and comments that this one subject has received. I'll typically put this in a lot of decks, a lot of morning meetings with editorial teams that I'll work with. And what I'm generally looking for is first, if a discussion has legs, what does the curve on this graph look like? Are we still increasing? Are we flatlining? Have we kind of missed the lead time on this conversation? And then what everyone always wants then is kind of more justification. So that's where I go into comments. So the comment search in Reddit, in Spike is very, very powerful. I can't overstate that enough, where I use this almost for pretty much any Reddit project I'm working on, where if I want to have matching comments only, of course, if I have a keyword, I can do that. But even just a means of, if you're not as familiar with Reddit, I mean, I've been in the platform for well over a decade, if not longer. So I remember the desktop days. But if you're unfamiliar with how the site is actually structured for how all the comments are nested, this is just a really cogent way of ranking it all, looking at the top performing comments, and getting a much clearer view of what the actual discussion looks like if you're less familiar. So this is, I would say, probably my favorite feature for the post by post looking into Reddit comments there.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was worried about interrupting.
I can't spell and you're muted, so yeah.
Yeah, no. We have one question come in. How far back does the data go in Spike? So you can look for 3 months at a time, back to I believe it's 2020, but we could do a 3 month period within any time frame back to 2021, I think.
At least until we started reporting the data, which I believe is right. That was 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So
but yeah, you can go pretty far back.
Yeah. So yeah, we can look at in the basic search. We can go 3 months at a time back to 2021 to answer that question. Cool. Is there anything else, Alex, that you wanted to show or highlight? I think we're kind of reaching the wrap up point now.
Yeah, I'd say the last piece I'd leave everyone with is the keyword search bar it will also search everything that you put in here. So, we looked at keywords, we looked at sources, which in Reddit's case would be considered a subreddit. The one kind of last pro tip I would leave everyone with is the URL search that we have, the capacity that we have, where if you have existing content, or even like for a light degree of competitor analysis, we can pop in a URL and look at its performance on Reddit. So even if I were to go to the last 7 days, I found, I tried to find like a fun article. So even this Fortune article about the sriracha shortage is posted relatively recently. If you just pop in a keyword in Spike, and let me go back to the most general version of that I want to show you across all of Reddit.
I should just say we did recently launch a 12-month view of Reddit as well. So you would be able to get access to up to 12 months at a time back to when we started capturing data, which I believe was 2021.
100%. So I went back 7 days, I put in this URL, and I'm able to, of course, I can rank it by comments, I can rank it by score, or even just when it was most recently posted. Every time this URL has been posted to Reddit. So it's always, this one's a really interesting example to me, only because you see one that for whatever reason, it was just posted today, really took off, versus on other subreddits. This was today I learned it's one of probably, if not one of the most popular subreddits. So you post it, it's a really good lesson on where you're posting on Reddit can make a big difference in terms of exposure. So if you're looking at own content, any type of competitor analysis for what other publishers or newsrooms are doing, this is a great way to get a really good quick perspective on that. That's not kind of frantically combing through the search bar on Reddit and having a really clear idea of how the content is performing when it was posted. And even if it's the same person posting back and forth, which in this case, it looks like it's not, it's all pretty organic, lots of different accounts.
Yeah, and Gabriel makes the point as well that it's really interesting, especially for news and politics, to see how articles are doing across different communities and how they're being discussed differently is really interesting as well. Probably the most interesting part of it. We have had another question come in. I think between you should be able to answer this. Does Spike have access to every subreddit? Does it capture new subreddits? How fast does it update with scores, etc.? I don't know. We might have to answer some of the technical questions offline, so you can follow up with us. But if you have an answer to that, Alex or Gabriel, that would be very helpful.
I think pretty much, how do I put it? Any subreddit that you would want to be using professionally should be available to you here. There are a variety of types of communities on subreddit, so this is not a digest of every single thing that we have, but a way to think of it is that anywhere that we would display ads, We don't display ads in every single community. Anywhere that ads would be displayed would appear here, and that really covers a large part of what you would want to be looking for. An exception to that may be sometimes there is a very, very small community that may not be ingested, although it generally should be. So point being, if you're seeing something that you want that for whatever reason is not there, I would love for it to be brought to our collective attention, but it should have you covered.
Yeah. And then Gabriel, this one's probably for you. Would you recommend journalists engage in a subreddit in an official capacity, as in follow up on an article in the comments? And is that the sort of thing that does happen?
Yes. The answer to all of those questions is yes. It is something that happens. If you want to make it happen and you're not sure how to do that, I will help you figure out how to make it happen. You should always be transparent. A lot of Reddit and a lot of communities are built off of trust. And if you reveal that you are actually a journalist that is working on a piece of reporting, and like the third turn of interactions that you've had with the user, they will not trust you, and they may be not happy with you. And frankly, it would be kind of understandable. So I think that the rule of pseudonymity applies to folks that are using Reddit in their capacity as lay people, human beings. And if you're using Reddit professionally, you should create an account specifically for that purpose. And again, if you have any questions about that, obviously, I'm happy to answer them. It's also worth noting that we are investing quite a bit. We have professional profiles for organizations now relatively recently. So there is more tooling to help you in your journey to use Reddit professionally as well.
Great. Thanks. I think that's it for questions. So I'll wrap it up there. Gabriel, did you have anything else that's exciting coming down from the track for Reddit that you wanted to talk about, or not to put you on the spot?
No, I don't mind. I alluded to Reddit Pro. That's Reddit Professional. It's basically business profiles. It's very exciting for us. It includes insights and analytics into how your content is performing on the platform. It also provides now some exportable metrics, which is a big deal for us. So very exciting that you now have access to that. There's also a brand mentions feed, so you can see how your brand specifically is being discussed on Reddit. That's interesting to you, integrated within your profile. And we are constantly building. So if you are not active on Reddit but would like to be, or you think your organization should be, please certainly reach out. We also have a private subreddit specifically for media partners, which is called r/media partnerships. It is a private subreddit, meaning that you will have to request to join, and you need to do it on desktop, because if you try on mobile, you're not going to be able to see it. And that's also a great way to get in touch. Yeah, I think that's what I got.
Sounds good. Cool. So if you have any questions about Reddit or the NewsWhip Spike side of things, you can feel free to reach out to me or to Alex or to anyone on our team. We will send around a recording of this to folks that attended or to folks that weren't able to make it. And yeah, I'd like to thank Gabriel and Alex for their time today. I certainly learned a few things about Sriracha that I didn't know, Alex. So so thanks for that. And yeah, just great to hear best practices on Reddit as well, as always, from Gabriel. So thanks everyone very much for coming, and we will send some stuff around, but do follow up with questions if you have any. Our information is around, definitely. Gabriel at reddit.com or benedict.nicholson@newswhip.com. You can reach me at as well. Cool. Thanks everyone. I'll leave it there. Bye.